Hey gang, before we get into this, I wanted to steal your attention for 1 second. Moving forward with this channel, I'd really like to see more feedback or suggestions for what you'd like to see in the future. Do you have a specific commander in mind you'd like to see, or maybe a style of gameplay? If you do, let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, without further delay, this is Brago, King Eternal. This kingly Azorius commander of bounce costs 2 colorless, 1 white, and 1 blue for a 2 power, 4 toughness flying spirit with 1 triggered ability. That ability reads, when Brago, King Eternal deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. This all happens during the combat damage step, so you get them back before the end of your turn, unlike some other flicker effects. Furthermore, his ability is very similar to Rune of the Hidden Realms, which you might have seen my other video on, only he isn't limited to only creatures. And he's better. And you can do your entire board at once. Yeah. Essentially, from the nature of his ability alone, we know that we want 3 types of cards in our deck. Strong, enter the battlefield type permanents, permanents that provide huge advantage but can be difficult to untap, and finally, ways to make Brago unblockable. So we know what we want, now let's see how the games usually play out. I feel like I can almost skip over any early game explanation by simply saying the first few turns are going to be about ramp, and then listing off a bunch of mana rocks or spells, but the reality is that Brago really does want you to run those mana rocks that can be explosive but with drawback. Being able to tap out with the mana rocks during your first main phase, then untapping them for your second, makes the deck so incredibly explosive and it should not be overlooked. The 3 best mana rocks for this deck are Basalt Monolith, Grim Monolith, and Mana Vault, with the last 2 being able to help us achieve a turn 2 Brago. Feel free to also run the typical Azorius Signet and Talisman for untapping wickedness. Resolving an early pair of either Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot boots isn't a bad thing. The second you reveal to people that you're on the Brago train, they'll know that disrupting your gameplay by killing Brago can and will disrupt your game. Further ways to protect Brago would be Whisper Silk Cloak and Unquestionable Authority. They function similarly, but I like the fact that you can flicker Unquestionable Authority and draw a card every turn with it. If that isn't enough, you can also try to resolve an early card draw engine like Rhystic Study or Mystic Remora. I mentioned Remora because I found that it often gets a bad rap due to its cumulative upkeep. This isn't so much an issue for Brago since we'll be blinking off all the EDH counters every time we connect to another player. By mid-game, you'll most likely be one of the primary targets unless you've somehow managed to fly under the radar or done basically nothing. To help alleviate some of the issues that will inevitably arise from people messing with your board, I recommend running a suite of recurring spells that can be bounced with Brago. Auramancer, Arcanomancer, and Karmic Guide are fantastic ways to bring back any lost enchantment, spells, or creatures respectively. You can also start to punish people who have been targeting you or disrupting your board state. Reality Acid is a phenomenal way to remind people who's in charge. Treachery is another way to mess with people, and it's a great way to untap lands at the same time. Being able to flicker this to steal a new threat and untap 5 lands after every combat is pretty brutal. If you're up against a stack, pillow fort, or control deck, resolving Active Authority to take out some of their key cards will really set them back. Chances are you'll never have to use the upkeep trigger since you'll be bouncing it during the end of the combat step anyway. Parallax Wave is a bit of a strange card. You can abuse it to save your own creatures from removal, use it offensively to exile opponent's creatures, and lastly, you can use it politically to enable enter the battlefield effects you might not control. This card will bring a lot of surprises and versatility to the already tricky deck. Hopefully you've been able to cast enough spells and blink enough permanents to survive until the endgame. Regrettably, unless you've gone down the Voltron route with the deck, your attack steps might have only consisted of Brago swinging. Although the commander damage will add up, you're going to want to close out the game as quickly as you can. To this end, I would recommend running a few mean cards, with the frontrunner being Stasis. Stasis will most likely win you the game if you're able to cast it when your opponents are tapped out. Chances are you'll have an untapped mana rock, so paying the upkeep cost will be nothing, and you can just blink them after your combat step to flicker everything you need. You can also oops all combo with 2 cards you'll typically be running in any EDH that focuses on enter the battlefield effects, Strionic Resonator, and any amount of mana rocks that can give you more than 2 mana. The way the combo works is you connect with Brago, then copy his triggered ability with Strionic Resonator. As long as you have 2 mana for mana rocks, you can continuously resolve the copy trigger, bounce all of your stuff, then recopy the original trigger forever. Some fun things to do with all these triggers are, blow everything up with Reality Acid, bounce everything back to their owner's hands with Nevermaker or Venser, make infinite mana, assuming you have more than 2 mana being made from rocks, and make them draw out their libraries with something like Stroke of Genius. If your playgroup is against infinite combos, then bouncing Lavinia of the 10th or Mire Battlesphere every combat step can quickly lead to being locked down or overwhelmed with Mires. The options you can use with this deck are endless. So now that I've given you an idea of how the deck plays, let's see what else we should be running in our Brago decks. Virtually any creature with a strong enter the battlefield effect that is white, blue, a combination of the two, or colorless can merit a spot in this deck. Your choices for what to run will be heavily affected by your own meta, but I found that the next few cards are universally good. Fencer Shaper Savant is a great way to deal with a spell, and then can act as a bounce creature later on. Frost Titan has a great ability that locks down a troublesome permanent and then can be attacked with and flickered to get double triggers. Duplicant is a great way to permanently deal with any game-winning or troublesome creatures. Phyrexian Metamorph is probably the best clone for our deck. Casting him early on as a mana rock only to flicker him later on to become a beater is just deeply satisfying. Sphinx of Athun can be a free Factor Fiction for every turn after we've cast him. Factor Fiction offers us some serious draw, and better still for this, comes on a decently sized beater body. Whirler Rogue is another token producer, but with an upside. While Mire Battlesphere can provide us with damage even if he's blocked, Whirler Rogue has a strong secondary activated ability that will let us connect with Brago. Thankfully, if we don't have any mana rocks, Whirler Rogue provides his own artifacts as he comes in. Lastly, Deadeye Navigator will let you go completely out of hand unless dealt with quickly, even though he doesn't have his own enter the battlefield effect. Venser the Sojourner does double duty in Brago since he's able to bounce permanents and at the same time provide all of our creatures with unblockability. His ultimate is pretty gravy, but chances are you'll be using him for his first two abilities more than anything. Well gang, that's my guide on the king of the bouncy castle, Brago King Eternal. He's a great commander if you're looking for a fun deck that doesn't lock out opponents, I'm looking at you Grand Arbiter Augustin IV, or provide us with a very linear playstyle like Voltron Geist of St. Traft. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe.